Good morning.
Happy
Hey
sip day.
guys,
Happy Sip. Happy Monday.
happy sip day.
Happy hot Monday here.
Chaotic, crazy week ahead, right? Hot week.
Summer's
Oh,
in full effect, so it's hot everywhere pretty much on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Well, I thought a good topic for our conversation today would be to talk a little bit to our audience about target date fund. And I feel like a lot of us are probably used to hearing this word within their 401k plans as like an investment option. And I thought it would be really good to kind of talk a little bit more about what exactly is a target date fund, how is it managed, and what does that mean to the investor? So Nav, can you start us off? What exactly is a target date fund?
Absolutely. No, great topic, great idea. And it's, one of the fastest growing and has been one of the fastest growing segments of investment management over the last 15 years because it's simple but effective. The broad overview is the target date on a fund, say it's a 2050 fund, simply means that's the likely year within a 5 year band that you're going to retire. So based on your age and your retirement is 65, let's say that. So if you were going to retire at 65 and you're 30 years old, you're going to be in a target date fund that fits the range. So 35 years from 20, so with 2025. So you'd be in the target date 20, what's that, 60, 65 fund. Um, and because of that, it typically takes your age and then fits you up to your risk on the fund. So the older you are, the shorter you have to reach age 65, the more conservative you're going to be. And then the younger you are, the longer you have to be invested in a market and stocks and things that are more risky that can benefit you long term. So you're not as affected by a downturn in the market as you are if you're closer to retirement. So it's a professionally managed fund that takes into effect your age, your risk tolerance, just strictly based on age, not based on your other circumstances, and then it adjusts based on how close you are to that target date. So this chart shows what a typical target date fund is and how it's allocated. So it usually has the major asset classes: U.S. stocks, international stocks, U.S. investment grade bonds, um, Treasury inflation protected bonds, and depending on the fund, it has international bonds and then cash. So it's made up of all of these different asset classes, and typically it holds them in index funds, depending on if it's the type of target date company it's with. So Vanguard would be one example. They typically use index funds. American Funds typically uses their own funds, which can be a mix of index and active. Um, and then there's BlackRock. There's all the major asset classes, Fidelity, all the major companies have them. And each one of them has a different way of doing them in terms of setting up the target dates and how they're invested. But from a high level view, you're typically going to have these asset classes plus international bonds. As you get closer to retirement, you see the transition from U.S. stocks, international stocks being the majority of the allocation, to then it becomes closer to, as you get closer, it gets a little bit more conservative, more bonds come in there, a little bit more cash. And then once you hit retirement, um, early retirement, late retirement, it gets even more conservative. So it's
right. So it's shifting with
exactly.
you. Yeah,
So Nav,
it's
so
cool.
So the things to look out. Mhm.
no, I was saying like it's kind of like a set it and forget it from an investor standpoint. However, in the background, you have a portfolio manager that's actually managing the risk tolerance and so forth, kind of behind the scenes. So there's a lot
Right.
going on. But as far as the investor, they put you in the year that you're going to retire, correct? Or that they project you to be at retirement age and then
Right.
invest according to that. I did have like a question. What if someone wanted, I want to retire when I'm, 55, not 65. Are you able to choose a different target date um other than like the default one that they would put you in?
Yes, so that's a choice that you have. So the default one's going to be based on your age and 65, but you can always choose to opt out of the default, use a different target date fund, or build your own. But if you say, hey, I want to retire younger, and I just want to use the set it and forget it professionally managed option, then you can just choose a target date fund that matches up with the age you plan to retire. And what that will
Right.
do, like we said, is just make it more conservative sooner.
Right. So you can set, like, if you were set to retire 2050, but maybe you're implementing a fire strategy, it might be 2040 you're selecting. If you're fire, you might be just out of target dates altogether. But my question on the target dates for NAV revolves around fees. Because when I think about 401ks and I think about, right, to me, 401ks scream accessibility to most of the workforce in America, which is the bulk, hopefully, right? Um, and that's how you're able to save for retirement. And so the target date, just based already on what you've said, seems like such a great solution that's so accessible to an already accessible platform. And it just kind of does the work for you, right? Easy peasy. But I know on the back end that fees can really be the killer in the 401ks for performance. So how do target date fund fees typically, kind of chip up against some of these other funds that you're able to have access to?
Sure, sure. So it's a topic of discussion for all 401k plans when they select the type of target date funds. And because different companies have different target dates with different underlying funds, so a target date fund is a fund of funds, they have different fee structures. So typically, a Vanguard fund, because they use all index funds, an index fund is a mutual fund that only invests strictly in the stocks and bonds and asset classes that are tied to an index, say the S&P 500 or the total US stock market, which means it has all of the stocks in the US stock market. And they're not making active bets to see which stock is going to outperform the market. It's just owning the market. So in an index fund, you own the market. So because you're not making those decisions, you're not paying as much for an active manager to try and beat it. So target date funds, if they have index funds underlying it, usually those are going to be the cheaper options. But if they have a active manager that is trying to actively beat whatever market they're invested in, they're going to be a little bit more expensive. So target date funds aren't all made equal. So you have to actually look and see what is the expense ratio of my target date fund. Typically, though, they're still fairly low cost. They're usually going to be more low cost than if you were in a active managed international fund alone, for example, or an active managed small cap fund. So they're typically on the lower end of the options, but it's still important to go ahead and check to see what exactly is my expense ratio in a target date fund.
Yeah, good. So just check the fund, because I do think that's an important factor that a lot of folks forget about, is that fees do matter even in 401ks. So
Absolutely.
And
awesome. Well, thanks.
definitely something that we help our clients with, just taking a look at their options. And so definitely lean on your financial advisor. And if your financial advisor's us, bring your 401k to us, we can take a look and help you out, make sure that you're allocated appropriately.
That's right.
Great stuff, guys.
Awesome.
You have a
Thanks,
good
Julie.
day.
Thanks, Nav.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye.